and we're sitting backstage watching the King play. When Buddy came out to play, and we were young, and even though he was 70, which seemed like it was really old, he totally blew us away. He didn't play like a 70-year-old. He played like he was 20. And he didn't look 70. Even though he had some gray hair, he looked 20 when he played. He played with such passion and such energy and just such sheer control that we watched that with our mouths open. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. He played young and youthful. What he played was exciting. It wasn't old and corny and old-fashioned. It was young and exciting. That is really the power of music. That music has no age barrier. 2 days ago in Florida, in Fort Myers, Florida, at this assisted living center, which is aligned with the Fort Myers Hospital, I go in there and I walk into Jim's room and I see this old man that I don't really remember him being this old. Even though I've seen him in the past few months, he aged tremendously these past few months. I go in there and he looked really old. As soon as he saw me, he sat up, he smiled, got out of bed into his wheelchair, grabbed his pad, and we went into playing drums. He no longer was 90. He was 20 again. And he started to play, and although he hadn't played months, he played, his hands, his technique was incredible. And I'm watching, I'm saying, like, he played great. Great. To me, the message is not so much what your ability is at and how good you are. The message today to learn is what's your desire to want to share it. I would much rather see someone giving me 110%, giving me all you got when you're playing, even if you're not playing that great, and your technique is not getting that good, and you're dropping a couple beats, and the groove is not totally fluid. I'm not even hearing that, because I'm too busy feeling your sheer desire to want to express yourself. That really is the magic. To go out and give 110%. And you know why 110%, 100% just isn't good enough anymore? Because we've got all these great players that have come before us. They're the pillars. They're the ones that built this art form. All of us on stage, Scott, Ben, and Mitch, and Chris, and myself, we're here now because of the great setting of example that these great masters gave us and what they passed down in this knowledge and their great enthusiasm. Enthusiasm, what a great word. That's what all these great older players have. Incredible enthusiasm. Enthusiasm coming from the old Greek word that basically means filled with God. Enthusiasmo, filled with God. Isn't that someone that comes out that plays for you and gives you all they have? Aren't they, to a degree, filled with God? How powerful that is. That this guy, Jim Chapin, on his deathbed, still got up and wanted to show that he still had it. From when I walked in that day to when I left that night. When I left that night, he was the old Jim Chapin. He was back and playing and incredible. That in less than a 24-hour period, drumming healed him. The doctor, after when I walked out, he said, "Mr. Famularo, I need a little bit of your time." I came in, I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You know, I gotta tell you something. We're all blown away here. We didn't exactly know who he was at the level of drumming that he was. And when you came down and started talking to him, and we were listening in, and then we heard him perform. He's better now." He said, 2 days ago, we had a priest in here giving him last rites. And now he's better. He said, "Look at him." So I said to the doctor, I said, "Listen, sit down for a second. Let me tell you who this guy is." See, many years ago in the 1880s is really where the drumming art form started, the education started to happen. There were three great teachers in the 1880s. They were born in the 1880s, and they died in the 1960s. The first was Billy Gladstone. Billy Gladstone was a great, great drum performer who played in Radio City Music Hall in New York and Lincoln Center, and he was a master with finger technique. The art of finger technique, where he had this ability of moving the stick in his fingers. And they called it the Gladstone technique, from Billy Gladstone. Again, Billy Gladstone, born in the 1880s and died in the 1960s. An incredibly powerful drummer. Didn't play drum set, only played snare. like, concert singer in the theater in vaudeville at that time for Broadway shows. But a brilliant player, but his technique, these guys were like movement scientists. So there was the Gladstone technique of the finger technique. Now the finger technique was about having the ability to be able to move these fingers separate from in here. So one of the techniques he would teach, which I learned, was this. Just try this. Hold your hands like this and stick these 3 fingers out. Do not squeeze your index finger and your thumb together. They should just kind of relax, be touching each other like they are in the midst of a real sensitive kiss. Really a real nice soft kiss. And they're just touching each other. Now you stretch these 3 fingers out. And then do this. Check this out. Without squeezing here, do this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. You gotta go all the way out and all the way in. Not this. This does nothing. All the way in. 1 and 2 and. Keep on going. Do not stop until I tell you. Keep going. And feel this. Now come on, all the way out. Come on, what are you, a sissy girl over here? Come on. Get your fingers moving. Feel that. Don't stop. Do you feel any stretching in your arm? You feel it now, right? Don't stop. Keep going. We're going to keep on doing this until blood is squirting out of your eyeballs. Feel it. Feel it. Now don't coil them. Bring them all, and all the way in. From out here, all the way in. 1 and 2 and. Look at your arm. Pull your shirt. Look at your arm. Look at the muscles that are working in your arm. Just pull your sleeves up. Look at the muscles that are going on. Hey, you got what's going on in here? What's going on in your muscles? Keep going. You feel it? You feel it in there? Don't stop. There's a little blood coming out of your left eye. Don't stop. Feel that. What you're feeling right now is the muscle development that Billy Gladstone wanted you to feel. He wanted to awaken you. Okay, stop right there for a second. He wanted to awaken you. Just shake your hands out. Yes, sir. Can you feel it?
Yeah.
He wanted to awaken you to know that in those muscles, you got to awaken your muscles. This is a physical instrument. When students come to me at my studio, I tell them I teach drumming Olympics. What Chris is doing, what Chris has performed for you, he's getting himself prepared to go on tour to play that way every night. Every night. When David talked about stretching, you got to get yourself in shape like a great runner. In the Olympics, you got to go out and you got to produce physical energy and make it happen. So Gladstone was about that finger movement, that finger technique. Then there was another gentleman in Boston by the name of George Lawrence Stone. George Lawrence Stone wrote what book? Stick Control. Stick Control was written in 1934. Still the #1 book sold for exercise patterns. The #1 book sold, Stick Control. Interesting that from that teacher, George Lawrence Stone, who died in the 1960s, his book is still the #1 book after all these years. George Lawrence Stone was more about a technique called the free stroke. He moved it from your wrist. Gladstone was from the fingers. George Lawrence Stone was from the wrist. So Gladstone had this happening from the fingers. That's only my fingers. My wrist is not moving here. That's only my fingers moving. George Lawrence Stone was from the wrist. Only the wrist. So George Lawrence Stone, whose father was a drummer, a Civil War drummer, and if you look at the cover of Stick Control, it says published by George B. Stone and Son. George B. Stone was the Civil War drummer. His son was George Lawrence Stone, who wrote the book. So now you can kind of see a history of what's going on with drumming. The third man was Sanford Augustus Moeller. Moeller came along and realized that he wanted more power out of the drums, and the only way to get more power was he had to incorporate his arm in a whipping motion. So Moeller came down and used this, as if you had an imaginary string on your wrist, and you did this. The tip of the stick is 1,000 pounds. The imaginary string is here, and you pull it up. You can see the string, right? You see it.